Today marks the third Sunday of Advent. The third candle is pink, and it symbolizes joy. It is pink because rose is a liturgical color for joy.
Our reading comes from Matthew 2. Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. About that time, some wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem asking, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him." And the star they had seen in the east guided them to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with his mother, Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. They opened their treasure chests and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
Would you pray with me? God of joy, it is in your love that we find lasting joy. Teach us to find joy in the gift of your Son, who came into this world with nothing, yet gave us everything. May his joy fill our hearts and overflow to all we encounter.
Sing with us. And oh come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here, unto the Son of God. Oh, come thou day spring, come and cheer our spirits by thy advent here. Disperse the gloomy clouds of night, and death's dark shadow put to flight. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel.
Good morning. It's great to see you. If we've never met, my name's Jay. I'm a part of the team here. I'm so glad you're here. I know we've got folks in the theater today and everybody over at South Hills. Hello. So glad you're all here. We're closing in. What a beautiful and perfect song as we sit in this Advent season, as we've been talking about. If you've been around, if you haven't, that's okay. We're so glad you're here today. But as we've been exploring for the last several weeks now, Advent is this season on the Christian calendar where we await. We live with this sort of longing and expectation, yes, of Christmas this year, but really ultimately for the return of Christ someday when he will come to make all wrong things right. And we've been on this journey for the last few weeks as we're marching toward our Christmas Eve gatherings and just Christmas and really the longing and expectation and desire of our hearts, which is that Christ will someday return. And today we arrive at an idea that I think is pertinent to every person listening today. Regardless of whether your life is just bright and cheery this Christmas season, or it's really hard and painful, or something in between. I don't know if you guys frequent Reddit. Some of you do, I'm sure. Others of us are like, what is Reddit? It's a forum where people just like post different things and ideas, and it's interesting, and some of it is crass and inappropriate and whatever. So I'm not recommending Reddit. This is not some blanket endorsement of Reddit, but it's really interesting. There's a forum, a particular forum. Like Reddit forums are all based on topics. If you don't know, and there's a particular Reddit forum called "Am I Overreacting?" Am I overreacting? And it has over 780,000 members. It ranks in the top 1% of all Reddit forums. And it's basically just dozens and dozens of people every single day posting photographs or screenshots of conversations or just situations that they've been in. And then they just type AOI, or AIO, am I overreacting? And then people will just comment like, yeah, you're totally overreacting. Or like, they'll say like, NOR, not overreacting. This is totally appropriate, whatever. Yesterday, a parent posted this photo. I'll show you the image. A parent posted this photo, and the post read, "My child stole my microwaved cheese sandwich and gave me his PB&J. Am I overreacting?" Because this parent was upset that his young child, cute little kid, his young child had basically asked for a PB&J, and then when the child saw his parents' cheese sandwich, microwaved cheese sandwich, gross, but either way, saw the cheese sandwich, and he was like, no, I want that instead. Let me read for you some of the comments. They're hilarious and awesome. "I used to have 4 children until one of them pulled something like this." Another commenter, NOR, not overreacting. This is how it all starts. First, it's the petty larceny of a sandwich. Next thing you know, he's hijacking 18-wheelers. Another comment, terrible roommate. You may need to move out. And notice the question on the forum is not, am I reacting? We're all reacting. To react is to be human, and to be human is to react. Right now, you are having some form of a reaction, positive or negative or benign, to the things happening in this room. The question is not, am I reacting? We are always reacting. The question is my reaction appropriate for the situation? Am I overreacting? You know, when I think about the biblical story and reactivity, when I think about biblical characters and reactivity, I think for many of us this is true, we naturally go to this man, Peter, who is one of Jesus's disciples, who is one of the most reactive and sometimes overreactive people in all of Scripture. He's reacting all the time. There's story after story after story of Peter's reactions or often overreactions to situations. One of the prime examples is Peter's reactivity when Jesus is being arrested. You guys remember this story? Let me just read a part of it to you. Basically, Jesus and his disciples are in a garden. Jesus knows what's going to happen. His disciples do not. They're just sort of oblivious. And then the temple guards and these Roman soldiers come to arrest Jesus. And this is going to be the beginning of Jesus's arrest and torture and eventual crucifixion and death. It's the very start of that story. And when Peter sees these people coming to arrest his teacher and his friend, this is what happens. John chapter 18. Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. And the servant's name was Malchus. And Jesus commanded Peter, "Put your sword away." Notice Jesus' response to Peter's reactivity. I would say Peter's overreaction. What does Jesus say? Put away your sword. I wonder sometimes in my own life when I overreact, or even worse, when I react in a way that is just so unchristian, and this is sadly common in my life. When I lose patience, when I've had a long day and I come home and my kids are not like the perfect kids I need them to be, I become that overreactive, and again, even worse, I just become that really unhealthy, impatient dad that I don't want to be. And I wonder in those moments if Jesus is whispering to me, put away your sword. The verbal, emotional swords that we wield to cut others down in our anger. You know, recently in culture, there are these phrases that have become really popular in like pop psychology world. Phrases like non-anxious presence. You guys heard this? Non-anxious presence. Be a non-anxious presence. Or self-differentiation. These are actually full ideas when you delve deeply into them. They become really popular, but both of those phrases, non-anxious presence and self-differentiation, they have risen in popularity recently, but they were actually first popularized by Edwin Friedman, who was a renowned 20th century therapist and actually a Jewish rabbi. And he originally described non-anxious, self-differentiated people this way. It's someone who is less likely to become lost in the anxious emotional processes swirling about. I mean, by non-anxious, self-differentiated people, someone who can be separate while still remaining connected, and therefore can maintain a non-anxious presence. I mean someone who can manage his or her own reactivity to the automatic reactivity of others. Peter reacts to his teacher and friend Jesus being arrested. But Jesus, though in many ways he is anxious because he knows what is going to happen, responds with self-differentiated, non-anxious presence. Put away your sword. Like Peter, I think many of us, maybe most of us, most of the time, we find ourselves, I find myself, I don't know about you, but I often find myself lost in the anxious, emotional processes swirling about. And I have found in my life it leads to a loss of connection. It leads to a loss of real embodied presence. I just want to leave, I want to disappear. It leads to increased anxiety and, yes, reactivity, which then eventually leads to disordered, disconnected relationships. When we think about the holidays, it's interesting. I mean, this season that is supposed to be merry and bright and full of cheer and joy, instead, the holidays for many of us have a way of amplifying the realities of our anxiety and reactivity, disconnection. Disconnection from family and friends, those people that we are supposed to be closest with. Some of us can relate to that. The holidays can increase our level of anxiety, sometimes about like working relationships or maybe hostility with coworkers or colleagues, maybe like some sort of job insecurity. It can lead to reactivity, looking for parking at the mall, sitting in traffic, At the holiday party, when that colleague says that thing you just so wish they would not say, or at the family dinner with that relative, you're just like, oh my goodness, once a year is too much. A couple of weeks ago, we started this journey. We've seen a great light, and it's based on this ancient prophetic text, like 2,800 years ago. This man Isaiah has this incredible vision from God, a prophetic, messianic message that even though the people of God at the time were living in real darkness, God spoke through Isaiah and said this: the people walking in darkness have seen a great light, and on those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned, that in the midst of whatever darkness we face, light is possible. Today, we arrive at a verse in this passage that offers us the light of peace and connection in the midst of the darkness of our conflict and reactivity. Isaiah 9, verse 5, the vision says that every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning. It'll be fuel for the fire. Now again, these words were written like 2,800 years ago, but here's the thing. Isaiah's vision did not exist in a vacuum. It was a prophetic confirmation on real conflict. It was a world covered in literal bloody boots and garments. Let me explain. I'll show you an image. This is a small ancient statue of an ancient goddess called Anat. Anat was the Canaanite goddess of war at the time of Isaiah. The stories told us that Anat, this Canaanite goddess of war, she reveled in violence and she thrived in battle. There was one well-known ancient text regarding Anat at the time of Isaiah that said this: she, Anat, wades knee-deep in the blood of her enemies. Anat symbolized a chaotic and unrelenting thirst for domination and destruction, to win at all costs, to pummel and destroy anyone who opposed her. And at the time of Isaiah, Anat was revered around the known world as a symbol of power in all the surrounding regions. This is the world into which Isaiah is writing. I'll show you another image. This is a famous wall painting called the Tel Barsip wall painting. The Tel Barsip wall painting is dated to about the 8th century BC in ancient Assyria, and it is very likely this was painted during the life and ministry of Isaiah, who lived about 300 miles south of this wall painting. Now, some of you who know the story of Isaiah and the context, you know that at the time of Isaiah, Assyria, where this painting was found, was the greatest threat to God's people. Assyria was the world empire at the time that oppressed Israel and Judah. Now, if you look at this painting, it's really interesting. The red, all of the red that you see in the painting depicts blood, and there is blood on the garments and the boots. Do you see that? There is blood on the garments and the boots. Isaiah lived in a world where the predominant belief was that the gods of war, like Anat, were the ones that ruled and reigned and held dominion and had all the power. And that they held this power through violent conflict by reacting to anyone who opposed them, by wading knee-deep in the blood of her enemies. He lived in a world where bloody boots and garments were the markers of victory and dominance. So let me read for you Isaiah's words again. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. The words take on a new life, do they not? Consider the world into which Isaiah speaks this incredible vision of the world to come through Jesus. Isaiah's prophetic vision rejects the notion that divine power is expressed through endless cycles of violence, and instead it paints a vision of lasting peace amid reactive conflict. Last week here at Saratoga and I at South Hills, Christina here at Saratoga, and then I was over at South Hills. It's such a joy to be with all of you there. We talked about the yokes that burden us. That was the previous verse in this passage. And if you remember, if you were here, we showed this video of glass shattering because the vision says that all the stuff that burdens you will be shattered. God will shatter it. And what Christina and I shared with you last week is that when something shatters, that thing is not coming back, right? Notice in today's text, what does God do to the bloody boots and garments of our reactivity and conflict? What does he do? He burns them. This is like shattering. You burn something, it is not coming back. So I want to ask a question, personal question. Where do you keep your bloody boots and garments? Chances are, if you're like me, you keep them somewhere. You don't burn them. You lock them in some dark, hidden closet in your heart or in your mind. I do. And I lock them away and I try to suppress it and even forget that they're there, but I've got to keep them. Because when I feel threatened, when that particular person who I cannot stand shows up, I got to grab my key and unlock the closet. I got to put on my boots and my garment and go to war. Because I can't lose. I can't lose to this person. I can't let them have the last word. Which areas of your life are most full of conflict? What are your triggers? What are the things people say or the particular people who say them that make you most viciously reactive? Which relationships are most broken? Where does God want to enter into your life in this Advent season to burn your bloody boots and garments? To burn it and make it fuel for the fire and to bring you peace. You know, this is an important question to ask, but let me just depress you for a moment. Just knowing or believing this, like hearing a little 30-minute sermon about this, is not enough. It's not going to work. Because knowing or believing that God can bring peace to our reactivity and conflict, that knowledge, that belief, it is always going to get subsumed by something else. One writer puts it this way, that anxiety is no respecter of belief systems. It is an indiscriminate trigger. Threat is threat. The reptilian brain is not impressed by the sincerity of what we believe to be true. It does what it is designed to do, react instinctively. In other words, knowing that you can be overreactive, knowing that you've got some triggers, knowing that there are conflicts in your life that are destructive and unhealthy, knowing those things is important, but it's not enough. So what does it take? Dallas Willard had this famous acronym that he called VIM, V-I-M, and it stood for 3 movements. First, we need a vision. A clear picture of the life God intends for you. When it comes to reactive conflict in our lives, that means having a vision or knowing and believing that a life of peace is possible. So knowing and believing does matter, it's vision. But then we need intention. You can't just know it, you've got to commit. Intention is a commitment to live into that vision of life. So in this case, when it comes to our reactive conflicts, our reactivity in life, it means a commitment to pursuing peace in all of our relationships, including those relationships that are so bloody and brutal. But then, it doesn't end there. You can't just know what needs to happen, the vision of life that you desire, that God desires for you. You can't just intend it. You can't just long for it and desire it. You need what Willard calls means, a set of practices to participate with God in embodying the vision. You have to now commit yourself to doing something, to living a particular way. And when it comes to this life of conflicted reactivity or reactive conflict, that means we have to commit to a set of practices that move us toward peace. So to conclude today, I want to give you a few things to practice this week. Sound good? They're intentionally somewhat general so that they can sort of be elastic enough to make their way into whatever particular reactive, conflicted relationships you have in your life. First, this week, if and when you sense disconnection from someone, choose empathy. When you start to feel disconnection, a sort of repulsive, I gotta get away, choose intentionally, choose empathy. When you're in that meeting, I'll just tell you something that I've been practicing for a little while that has been very helpful to me. Sometimes I will have meetings with people in our church or people who aren't a part of our church, who for whatever reason reach out. And most of the time, you guys, I don't want to paint an inaccurate picture. Most of my meetings are really beautiful and profound and encouraging. You as a church are so encouraging. But like 3 of you are not nice to me. And I'm not going to say which 3. But they are in this room. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You're not. Or maybe you are. I don't know. Let's just let the mystery linger. Okay. When those things happen, when somebody is really upset or angry with me, for most of my life, not just as a pastor, but just in life, most of my life, I just revert to conflict and reactivity. The reptilian brain in me tells me I cannot lose to this person poses a threat, so my body begins to tense up and I begin to take on a defensive posture. This is what most of us do. It's natural, it's human instinct. Again, it's reptilian or animalistic or primal. It's sort of in us. So the means to get away from that and to have a paradigm shift toward peace in our lives means that we, in those moments of disconnection and distance, we've got to choose empathy. Empathy is the way in which we begin to intentionally lean into the person and not away from them. And one thing that has been helpful for me, this is so weird, but it's been actually helpful. When I have these meetings, when somebody's really upset with me, I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. Many of you know that already. Depending on their gender, I will imagine them at the age of my children. This person that is yelling at me, telling me whatever, I'm a heretic or a bad leader, whatever, which is fine. Maybe I am, I don't know. But when that is happening, and I feel in my body a desire to or get this person as my 6-year-old son or my 9-year-old daughter. And it's a weird thing. Because what it reminds me of is that is not a hypothetical. That at some point, this man was a 6-year-old boy who was loved and adored and admired by some caretaker or parent the way I love and adore and admire my son. That this woman who is screaming at me at some point was a 9-year-old 4th grade girl. And her dad took her to a daddy-daughter dance. And in that moment, that dad saw this little girl and thought to himself, what a gift. And I start thinking about those things and I realize it's just another broken, flawed, hurting human being like me who is loved. It's a way to choose empathy instead of disconnection. Another practice this week. When you sense anxiety, choose providence. And that word providence, I was talking to my friend Dave Tish, our teaching pastor over at South Hills this week, and he had this beautiful thing. He's like, man, providence is such a profound word, but most people don't even know really what it means anymore because it's kind of like not a cool word to use. Providence, put very simply, is the idea that God is in control. Anxiety is lots of things. Well, let me just give you one personal definition, something that I have learned over the years in my own body, really. I have learned that for me, anxiety is when my body wakes up to the lie that I believe most of the time that I'm in control. Anxiety almost always rears its ugly head in me when I wake up to the fact that I actually don't have control. And in our sort of culture of self-help, that we can do it on our own, we need to recapture the beauty of providence. That God's in control. You have very little control. God does not ask you to be in control. God asks you to be faithful and to trust. So this week, when anxiety begins to bubble up in you, remind yourself that you're not in control. That God is simply asking you to trust him and to be faithful to whatever he is asking of you in that moment. And finally, when you sense reactivity in your body this week, choose reflection. This is absolutely true in the most painful, difficult relationships of our lives. But it's also true in the everyday moments. This week, when you go to Costco, you hear that nervous laughter? It's because everyone knows how sinful they become in the Costco parking lot. This week, when you go to Costco, right? Your body's already feeling the reactivity just from the word Costco. When that person takes the parking spot, your blinker was on. It's like, do you not see? The blinker was on. When that person that takes the parking spot that is rightfully yours, God's gift to you, and like Jacob and Esau, it's stolen from you. Instead of reacting, reflect. This sounds so silly and cheesy, but like, take a deep breath and remind yourself, I wonder what's happening in that person's life that makes them so hurried and rushed like me. Like, yes, they're at Costco just like me, but I wonder what they're buying and who they're buying it for, and I wonder what sort of pain and hurt might be in those relationships. Are they buying a gift for a child that has strayed far away, and this is like their last-ditch effort? Maybe I can just buy my way back into relationship. Listen, that might not be true. They might have taken your parking spot just because they're a jerk, and that's okay. Either way, the point is not what is true or untrue in their life. The point is what happens in you. To reflect and remind yourself that life is so much bigger than parking spots and getting the thing that you think you need to be happy or whatever. So when you sense reactivity, choose reflection. I'm going to invite the worship team up here at Saratoga and at South Hill. We'll on together today, though. I want to give us a moment to quietly reflect. I want us to quietly reflect on the bloody boots and garments that we have hidden in the closets and the interiors of our lives. So we're going to dim the lights in the room and at South Hills, and I want to ask everybody in the theater, South Hills, right here, Saratoga, I want to ask you to just close your eyes. Everyone close their eyes, and Initially, this will not feel great, but I would like for all of us here to think about whatever reactive conflict exists in your life. Maybe it's a person. Maybe there's a particular person in your life, someone in your family, maybe someone in your home. Maybe it's your spouse or your partner. Maybe it's a child or a parent. I want you to think about someone that sort of almost always gets under your skin. And just like reactive conflict is the theme of your relationship. Or maybe it's not a person. Maybe it's a situation. It's a circumstance at work or a financial situation or some other thing you're going through that even now as I'm saying that, you can feel it in your body. It's just like, oh. I want you to bring that to the forefront of your thinking. Just think about it, ponder it. And as you do, I just want to read these truths from Scripture over you. As you make a commitment this week to empathize when you feel disconnection, to choose the providence of God when you feel anxiety, and to choose reflection when you want to react. Philippians 4, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ. Colossians 3, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace. Romans 15, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Matthew 5, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Psalm 34, turn from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it. Romans 12, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. 2 Thessalonians 3, now, may the Lord of peace himself give you peace at all times and in every way. The Lord be with all of you.